Well, good evening, everybody, and might I say, Happy New Year. Yes, this is the first episode in the new year. So, for all of you that have followed me last year, thank you so much for your support. And for the new people that's just coming on board, glad you're here as well. Uh, got some interesting shows for you coming up, had very interesting shows last year. So, for the new people, if you haven't seen all the episodes, when you click on Van Buren Variety, click on that videos tab, and you will see all the past episodes that I've done from episode 1 till this one, which is episode 42. So, again, Happy New Year. I had a great show last year. I've got some great guests and topics for this year. So, I'm really looking forward to it. And I couldn't do it without you, the subscribers, the listeners, and of course, my great guests that I've had on. So, I appreciate you giving me the confidence and sharing your knowledge and sharing your activities in life with me. So, just a reminder, if you're not a subscriber and you like what you see, make sure you hit that subscribe button because that way you'll see upcoming events. And also, if you like it, don't just watch this video. Make sure you hit the like button. And that way we'll know you're watching and let us know what future topics you'd like to see. So, hence the name Variety. So, hope you've all had a great new year. I certainly did. I spent the New Year's Day with Tex, very best friend that you all know, Tex and his family. We had black eyed peas, of course. That's a must have, right? And they showed me how to play a game, a new game. It's called Five Crowns. Okay, yes, Five Crowns. And I had never heard of the game before. It's a card game. And if you want more information, go Google it because it would take me too long to describe it. And I've got a great guest coming on. So, Five Crowns, the more people you have, the better it is. There's wild cards, uh, all kinds of things that you can do with that game. So, make sure you check that out. And I appreciate Tex and his family inviting me over. We had a great New Year's Day. And of course, looking forward to a brand new year. So, again, on behalf of Van Buren Variety, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Got a great topic for you tonight. But before I get into the topic and my guest, let me just kind of go over some things. And what I'm about to say, I am guilty of this as well. Sometimes I take advantage or I forget how blessed I am with having really, really good health. Unfortunately, I think we all forget that we have some things that other people envy or are not blessed to have or not born with. Well, for example, now one thing that I do not have is good eyesight. Now it looks like I'm not wearing glasses, but I do wear contact lenses, and that is a must-have for me. For example, if I took my contact lenses out right now, I would not be able to even recognize myself on my own computer screen. It would be a complete blur. So a lot of you don't have to get up in the morning, put on contacts, put on glasses. You're blessed with great eyesight, and that's great. But I don't let my bad eyesight hold me back. I can wear contacts. I can get up in the middle of the night, wear glasses. So I'm still blessed because I have other, I've got all my fingers and toes. And so if eyesight's the only thing, I'm doing really good. But some people cannot hear. They're not blessed with hearing. Either they're completely deaf or they're so hard of hearing they can't hear, unfortunately, birds singing in the trees or the things that we take advantage of, listening to our favorite song on the radio. And, and I'm guilty. Again, I need to pray more to thank him for all the blessings. But I want to point out, just because a person does not hear, they do not let that hinder them. In fact, I have some perfect examples here of people that were deaf or nearly deaf that did not let that be an obstacle in their lives. Some of these you may know, some of these you may not know. Some of these you may be surprised to see that were deaf. Now, some of you might know who this is. If not, this is Beethoven. Yes, the famous musician, for example, Beethoven's Fifth. Da 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 da. Yeah. He was completely tone deaf, but as history shows, he has got so many classical masterpieces that the world would be robbed if he had not written these pieces for us. Here's one that shocked me. I didn't know this till today when I was doing my research for this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Thomas Edison. Yes, the great inventor. And I did not know till today, till I researched him. I don't know which ear, but he was completely deaf in one ear. And he was extremely hard of hearing and almost deaf in the other. Well, history shows what his inventions were and how that has actually changed the world due to his contribution to society. Here's one I'm sure that we've all heard about in school. We studied about her life. This is Helen Keller, ladies and gentlemen. She was both hearing impaired and sight impaired, but yet she is known as one of the world's best authors and advocate for disabilities. So a very good example of not letting anything or anybody hold her back. So a great admiration for this wonderful lady here. Now, I've talked about historical figures, but there are people today that are still carrying on the torch, that do not let their hearing impairment or their sight impairment or any impairment at all hold them back. For some of you may not, I did not know who this was at first, but maybe some of our younger audience might know. This is, let me see if I can pull his name up here. It's, Niall DeMarco. He was on Dancing with the Stars, for those of you that watched that. And he won, from what I've heard. He is also an actor. He is a model. And he is deaf. And he is an advocate for the hearing impaired. In fact, I've actually seen him on a show called What Would You Do? Where if a person witnessed discrimination against a hearing impaired person, what would you do? Would you defend the person or would you pretend you didn't see it? And he was very happy to see that most people would come in defense of the hearing impaired person that was being picked on. So one of the things that we need to do, and I'm talking about us, the hearing community, we need to know sign language so we can talk to these wonderful people. I myself took a sign language course many, many years ago. I worked as an office assistant for a place for the deaf, where I learned a lot of what they call American Sign Language, or what we would say conversational sign language. But it's been a long time since I've done that, so I have forgot a lot of my signs. But my next guest is going to teach us a little bit of conversational sign language, but also how she got into it, the deaf community, and what her training was about. So she's got a wealth of information, folks, and I'm really, really honored to have her on the show. So let me bring her on now. Hello, Christine.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Christine. She is a licensed interpreter with American Sign Language for the hearing impaired, and she's going to tell us all about her career, her experiences, and even going to teach us a little maybe ASL. I need as much help as I can get. So, Christine, welcome to the Van Buren Variety Show.
Oh, well, thank you, Bob. I really appreciate being able to, that you asked me to come on and talk about sign language.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, I'm looking to learn some conversational signs. And ladies and gentlemen, I want y'all to pay attention because we're going to be teaching you some signs later on. So not want to pay attention, but I like to kind of jump into it, Christine. When did you get into learning sign language, and how were you able to, how did all this start for you? Yeah.
Well, I think it started probably 1973. I joined a church in Ohio, and a lady came and said, I want to start a deaf ministry. Who wants to learn sign language? Well, I was just a new Christian, and I thought, oh, that sounded like fun. So yeah, me, I want to do that. And I took 10 lessons. They were an hour apiece. Yeah, I just absorbed everything. I thought it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it.
It is.
Mm-hmm. And then we moved, and we went to another church. And about 3 months after we went to this new church, the pastor's wife, who did all the interpreting, got really bad arthritis in her hands. Oh, no. And she said to me, you've got to take over. So me and my 10 big lessons started interpreting in the church. Wow. And that's where I began. And the rest of it, I learned mostly from the deaf community. And back then, there wasn't as many classes or as much training in interpreting as there are now. And so I just kind of learned from the deaf, which is really a good way to learn, and just kept going.
Wow. So I know what you mean. I was an interpreter for a while at a church. And now I wasn't as well versed then as I am now, but just to be able to help somebody, to be able to sign what the preacher is saying, and even during the songs, the songs. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to catch me during this conversation. I'm going to do some signs as I remember them. And Christina here will correct me if I'm doing the wrong signs. So I don't want to tell you wrong. So this is a conversation that's really near to my heart as well. So let me ask you. Now, anybody can learn American Sign Language, but it takes a special talent and special training to be what we call a licensed interpreter. So, can you kind of go into the licensed interpreter, or we'll assume someone has all the American Sign Language? How do they get licensed, like to be a professional interpreter for the deaf?
Okay, I think the right word is certified.
Certified.
And
okay.
when I got certified, the process was different. I got certified in 1989. And at that time, somebody gave me a whole stack of books, told me to read them. And you had to pass written tests on, let's see, what were they about? They were on the history of the deaf. They were on different types of sign language. They were on deaf people themselves and deaf culture. There were even classes on what you dressed in and what you looked for, like having lighted windows behind you is just terrible to be looking at. Your clothes should be a solid color so that the deaf's eyes don't get weary. And so there were a lot of things. And then you had to actually do some interpreting to pass a test. So you had to pass the written portions first and a lot of ethics. Interpreting has almost as many ethics as being a doctor or a lawyer. In fact, we observe all of those ethical rules that apply to doctors and lawyers about confidentiality and
sure.
Yeah. So anyway, we had to pass all of that first, and then I had to do 10 minutes. I'll say 10, it might have been 15, of nothing but interpreting for a deaf person. And then I had to do 10 or 15 minutes of voicing for a hearing person. And then I had to do 10 or 15 minutes sitting next to a deaf person across from a hearing person.
Wow.
And interpret an interview back and forth between these people. And then 9 people reviewed it. So it was a long process.
9 people? 9 people reviewed. Oh, wow.
I took the test in April, and I didn't get my results until my birthday on October the 10th.
Oh, no. Wow.
Oh, yeah. It took a long time. But 3 hearing people that didn't sign at all just listened to see if what you said made sense. And 3 deaf people who didn't want to know about the hearing part of it just watched you to see if what you signed made sense. And then 3 interpreters watched you to make sure that what you were signing was really what the hearing person was saying, and then what you were voicing was really what the deaf person was signing back to you. And so after you got through all of that, they gave you a certification. And I have a certification in transliterating. And you could have gotten another certification. There's one in transliterating, which it's conceptual, but it's more on the English side of the spectrum. And then there's another one in interpreting, and that's strictly ASL. And ASL is not English. It's a foreign language, as you learned when you took a class in it. And it has its own syntax. That means its own structure.
That's right.
It's different. It's not English on your hands. It's a different structure. And so the more I worked with the deaf, the more I kind of slid over towards ASL because that's what they use.
I can relate.
Now they have the NIC tests, and I haven't taken one. When you get your certification every 3 years, you have to do continuing education units. And they're 1 credit per hour. So for 9 credits, that's 90 hours of work to keep your certification in effect. So it's not easy to get into. It's not easy to keep up with, but it's worth it.
I'd like to expand on something you just said. In fact, our audience probably is not aware. I'm telling the history on me. I took a sign language class when I was still in high school. Okay. But it wasn't until after I got out of high school and started working as an office assistant for this office for the deaf. There are two types of sign language, ladies and gentlemen. There is what they call sign English. Okay, that's called sign English. There's also one called American Sign Language. Now, to draw a comparison, that's like you or us going to high school and college learning Spanish. More than likely, you're going to be taught the formal Spanish, okay? Not the conversational Spanish that's actually spoken by the Hispanic community. There is a such thing in the deaf community. Most of the time when you're in high school, or maybe college, they'll teach you sign English, which is the proper English. Let me give you an example, okay? I'm going to say a sentence out loud, but I'm going to sign it in sign English and then say the same thing in American Sign Language so you can see the difference, okay? That I'm going to say, I do it quickly, okay? I do it quickly. In sign English, it would look like this. I do it quickly. That's L-Y. So, okay, let me do it again. Sign English, the formal, I do it quickly. Okay. Now, here's the same sentence in American Sign Language, okay? I do it quickly. Is that correct, Christine, what I just did in a way? Or did I get close?
Well,
Maybe?
it's fine. It's like art. We can all draw the same picture and make it look a little different. And so what you did is just fine.
Okay. But you see the difference. You can see
yeah.
it's drawn out when you do the formal sign. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I still had my sign English book that from high school. I took it when I was an office assistant at this place for the deaf, and the deaf people there had a field day with it. They're like, in their own way, they're saying, we don't sign like that. They were just making fun of it. I guess, why would people teach sign English, Christine, in your opinion, if it's really not a conversational sign?
Well, the reason is what you're talking about is C signing, which is signing exact English. And they do that because they want the deaf to learn how to read.
Oh,
And they want them to learn how to read English in English structure.
Okay.
And they want them to learn all the LYs and the EDs. I think it's interesting in sign language. There's no verbs like we have them. There's no past or future tense verbs. Right. But there are, if you know what you're looking at. If I tell you a story and I said, oh, this happened before.
Yeah.
Then
before.
As an interpreter, you would know all the verbs go into past tense. There's nothing signed about it. It's just it happened back then. So you know past tense. Or then I would say finish with that story now. So if it's now, then you're going to put all your verbs into present tense.
Yes.
But then if I tell you I'm going to do something, I will, then you have to put everything into future tense. But the deaf already know that. It's just the hearing people that think these people don't know anything about verbs. They're mixing up all their times. No, you're just mixing them up in your mind. They know what they're talking about.
Well, let's kind of, if we don't mind, let's give our audience just some conversational, if you want. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to teach you ASL. That's American Sign Language. So if you hear ASL, that stands for American Sign Language. That is the conversational piece that most hearing impaired people use. So we're going to do this the ASL way. And so what we're going to say is one person's going to say, how are you? And the normal response to that is fine. So Christine, I'll let you do it. You're the expert more than I am. So how would you sign, how are you in sign language?
I'm going to back up a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to do it with you. So ladies and gentlemen, watch real close. Did you see that? You're rolling your hands, right? A little bit. How, that's kind of how. You. Notice we left the word are out, ladies and gentlemen. It's assumed. Why would you want to say, spell it out? How are you? Ready? How are you?
Yeah, this is the sign people have trouble with. If you put your hands outward together like this, whoops, if I can get in center, and then you just roll them around so they're facing you. And that's a troublesome sign for some people.
It is, yeah.
How are you?
Yeah. Okay, and then the proper response, or most time people when they hear how are you, the proper response is fine. So how would we do fine in sign language?
Just
she's doing like so you're doing your thumb out this way, correct? And you're pointing it directly. I guess you say at your sternum. I'll move up a little bit. So this is fine, ladies and gentlemen. So how are you? Fine.
You can say good too.
You can say good. This is the sign for good. Yeah, I'm doing good, or I'm fine. Notice we're not saying I am fine. I am good. Who talks like that? Just, hey, how are you? I'm good, or I'm fine. So there's a little bit of sign language for you there, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. And ASL is more than just conversational. It's their formal language.
Absolutely.
It's the way they talk. It's their structured language.
I've got a comment here, Christine, and I'm sure you'll be honored to hear this comment or read it. Text from Trinity says, you should start a channel and give classes. I agree with that.
Oh, I think there's some places on the internet where you can get sign language classes. I don't know. That's an interesting idea. Oh, yeah. I have to figure out how to do that and when to get that much time.
Well, I'll tell you, Christine, Tex, I have to give him all the credit from Trinity. He's the one that helped me, gave me the training to start Van Buren. So he or I would be glad to help you if you decide to do that.
Okay.
And also to my audience, that you can Google how to spell in sign language. In fact, I have a little display here I'm going to show you all. So you can Google this, and this tells you the alphabet letter by letter. So you can either, when you watch this later, you can pause it, right here on this YouTube channel, or you can just Google ASL finger spelling or American Sign Language spelling. This tells you all the letters of the alphabet. And so, like, for example, let me take this out. My first name is Bob. So this is the sign for B. Notice I've got my thumb here, okay? And this is the letter O, okay? Then my last letter is B. So if I want to say my name is Bob, I would say my name is B, B-O-B. Let me do that again because I might have done that too fast. So if I tell you, or a deaf person, my name is Bob, it'd be it's mine. Okay. Name is this. Notice I've got two fingers this way, but I'm crisscrossing them. Is that correct, Christine?
Yes. Yes, okay. It is.
So I'm telling you, or my hearing impaired audience, my name is B-O-B. And you don't have to turn your O out that way. I'm just showing you for the audience what I'm doing. So it's B-O-B. Mm-hmm. So if you want to, go to Google, pull something up like this, and you can spell your own name. It's not very hard to do at all. And for those of you that might be looking at that, oh no, I'll never learn all those signs with all those letters. Well, in the first grade, our first day, we said, oh, we'll never learn the alphabet. But what? We now know the alphabet A through Z like our back of our hands now. So, and then here's a sign that I think is it's well known. And it's very something that is very appropriate. So I'm going to give the audience, a test, okay? I'm going to display a sign, and I'm going to see if anybody knows what this means, okay? I'm going to give you just a few seconds to look at it, and I'll look in chat to see if anybody's got it. Here it is. Have you seen that sign, or can you just take a guess what this means? And no, it's not X-rated. It's something very, very nice. So I want to make sure, no, there's no vulgar signs here, but no, that is something very well known. And we have a winner here. Look at this. Someone got it. Yay, Randy.
Randy.
That is the sign for I love you. So yeah, just look at that sign. And when you do that, that is the sign for I love you. So a very, very lovely sign. So congratulations, Randy. Oh,
Okay. I'd like to point out something too. When you spell, this is your face. A lot of people want to spell like talking to themselves, but you
that's
turn it
true.
around. I'm going to get back and my audio is going to go down, but I want to
Oh, wait,
show
we
you.
can hear you. Go ahead.
That's my name, Christine.
I read
And
it.
a lot of people want to do this in between every letter. Oh, that's so hard to read. Keep your hand still.
Okay.
The only time you move it is when you switch to an H, and then you come back and you keep your hand very still.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it easy to read. And this is all three letters.
Mm-hmm.
This is I for I, L for love, and Y for you. So it's all three letters put together.
You know, I never made that connection, Christine. You told me something I did not know. It is a combination of I, L, and Y for I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, see, I told you, ladies and gentlemen, not only are you learning, I, the host, am learning. So it's awesome. It's really great.
And this is just like hi and goodbye, and like
Good luck.
I love you. It's not that romantic. I love you. No.
Yeah, right. So, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's easy to learn. Just start out fresh. I mean, my advice, Christine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but start with the alphabet. Is that where they should start first?
You
Or
can. I mean, it's a good place, but I want to remind you if it's a word that you think you better spell because you don't know the sign, chances are it's a word they probably don't know either. Because, like I say, they deal in concepts. And we have so many words that all mean the same thing. We have big and beautiful and Yuma and gorgeous. And I mean, there's a lot of words, but there's a sign for that. And all of those fit into one container. They all mean the same thing. And sign language has three parts. It has your hand part,
mm-hmm.
it has your expression part, and it has your body part. And so all three of them work together so that if it's just kind of pretty, yeah, it's okay. Because my face is, it's pretty. Or if it's, wow, it's gorgeous.
Right.
See me, I'm just big. It's like, it's beautiful.
Like you said, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a sign for beautiful. Yeah.
Beautiful, yeah. So anyway, that gives you your synonyms. It's just the one concept, and the body language gives you the correct synonym to choose for the word. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to ask you, and I want to make sure our audience knows, understands. Now, we're calling this American Sign Language. Okay, and we're calling that for a reason, because hearing impaired people in Spain, for example, like they talk a different language in English, they may have their own signs. Hearing impaired people in Japan may have their own signs. So, in other words, like for example, in the United States here, we mostly speak English. In Japan, they speak Japanese. In Spain, they speak Spanish. So, is that correct, Christine, that different countries have different signs depending on where they are?
They do. And for example, tell you something you may not know, that American Sign Language didn't come from England.
Well, it did not.
No, Gallaudet sent his chief operating officer to England to learn about the deaf, to bring that back, to start Gallaudet, which is America's first university for the deaf. But England was very nasty, and they said, no, we are not sharing our sign language with you.
Oh, no.
And so English Sign Language requires two hands. I can give you the vowels. I don't know all of it, but this is A, E, I, O, U. And this is T, A, and this is Z, because I learned that talking about Tasmania. But their sign language is two-handed. Ours is one-handed because it's easier, and it came from France. And so if you want to know syntactically why English follows more of the Latin or the Romance languages, like Spanish and French and Italian and all of the Romance languages, it's because it came from France and from a Romance language. And so it's syntactically more like those languages than it is like English.
Wow, interesting. Hey, we have a question from the audience, Christine. Let me bring
Yes.
that up. Richard is asking, what's the most interesting situation Christine's been in as an interpreter?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, where do you start, right?
Yeah. I've been in a lot of interesting situations. I don't know. I mean, to pick just one,
We got
it's
time.
really
You can pick more than
difficult.
one if you want. You don't have to narrow it down.
Um, I'm thinking, I'm trying to, I mean, I've had things that are funny. I've had things that are sad. I've had to interpret things that were exciting or that were depressing.
All kinds. Uh-huh.
Yeah, just all different sorts of things. But as for most interesting,
We may have to come back to that, Richard. She's got so many. So,
by the way, I know that person.
oh, Richard, you can't hide from her. She knows you. And
I know him well.
you were talking about England just now, and Jean
Yes.
left a comment that I think we can agree with. She goes, "Well, England needs to learn to be nice in the sandbox." Think that's a good one, Jean.
Yeah, well, they weren't nice about that, but oh well. I know some deaf people that when they want to talk behind the kid's back, they spell in English Sign Language.
Oh, they do. Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Now we kind of talked about something now, and this does happen. Now this is a hypothetical situation, ladies and gentlemen. When I was working for this employer, which serviced deaf people and hearing impaired, uh, certain licensed professionals have to make a determination if they really want to be in that situation. So, Christine, I'll kind of bring this up to you now that we have a live audience. Let's just say there's a licensed interpreter and she or he is on the level and they are interpreting between a hearing person that doesn't know sign and a hearing impaired person that cannot speak. Okay. All of a sudden, the hearing impaired person and the hearing person start talking about conducting an illegal activity, fill in the blank. Could be anything that's against the law, a really horrific crime. Okay. The interpreter is licensed. I mean, he or he may have an obligation. How do they handle that when they start talking about some things that are illegal? What can the interpreter do at this point?
Well, if they give me some kind of warning, I'm just going to tell them, hey, I'm responsible. If you're telling me about breaking the law, then I'm going to report it. And most of the time, they'll just shut up. But I mean, if they actually tell me about killing somebody, no, I'm going to give it to the police. I'm not under an obligation to be quiet about that.
Because sometimes we hear the interpreters, they can't repeat back what they hear. But in this situation, of course, is the exception. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, things that are very illegal or that are illegal. I mean, I've been in a doctor's office where I've seen the client say, well, I'm just going to get an extra prescription because I don't want to run out, which is not a biggie. I mean, I didn't see any obligation to report him on that. But other things, I don't think I've ever had anybody do that. I can tell you, I worked VRS, which is video relay, and I have heard, or I have had, don't be shocked, pornographic calls come in. And the minute I see them, I'm like, hold on. And I'm like,
nope.
Other interpreter, take this call. I don't want this call.
Now, you mentioned something I'd like to bring up. I almost forgot about this, but one of the things that I was responsible for at this place for the deaf was setting up a TTY. I am sure you know what a TTY is. And we would have to call. Now, I'm from Texas, so the place was called Relay Texas. Okay. And it was a phone service. And so I'll let you describe. Tell the audience here, what is a TTY? How would you describe that?
Okay. Today we all have keyboards. We know what they were. A TTY, The original TTY was an enormous monstrosity.
Yeah.
That was a teletype machine. And
Mhm.
it stood in the corner, and it had the little round keys like the old typewriters had, and you would have to type out your message. Then TTYs became modern, and the keyboard shrank, and the phone sat on it, and you pick it up, and
The
then
receiver. Yep.
you'd have the receiver, and you would type. And for like, I had a deaf boy. He was a foster child, and I later got custody of him. But he was terrible with language. He was feral. He didn't have a language hardly at all. And when he started school, when he was finally put into a school for the deaf, he was 8 years old, and he had to learn signing. He had to learn signs. Now, that's not language. You don't know what to do with these signs. Kids don't know how to make sentences very well when they're very small. So he started at 8, learning how to sequence language, or actually a little after 8. And science has studied the brain of children, and after about 5 or 6, their ability to pick things up starts closing down. And so he had a very difficult time. And the TTY was a particularly difficult instrument for him. I know he would start typing, he'd get 2 or 3 words down, and then he'd think, no, that's not right, and he'd erase it all. And I was on conversations with him for almost an hour where he didn't hardly type anything. He'd get half of it out, and then he'd erase it all. And he went through 2 or 3 relay operators.
Oh, wow.
So now with the advent of VRS and Facebook and FaceTime and all this stuff, it's
texting.
Really, yeah. Oh yeah, they love that. And there's an app out there called Marco Polo where you can even answer your phone and say, leave a message in sign language and pick it up later.
That's awesome.
So it is. By the way, I have thought about my most interesting sign language experience.
Okay, we're ready to hear this one. This is very interesting.
Well, this was interesting to me.
Okay.
May not be interesting to you.
Oh, I'm sure it will be.
Maybe. I was hired to interpret a balloon angioplasty and stent insertion for an older lady. And I don't know if you've ever been, you've never been into the operating room, but when they do this kind of, it's a cath procedure, and during cath procedures, your client is awake. The patient is awake for a cath procedure.
The entire time.
I was in there the entire time to interpret for her all of the conversations, all of the instructions, and all the questions. Mainly they were asking her about how she was feeling and what she was doing. And while she was in there, you got to look up on the screen and you could see what they were doing. They could see the cath going through into the heart. You could see the stents going in. You could see them checking out the arteries and saying, no, this artery isn't good. We need to do a balloon angioplasty in there to make sure that it looks like a tear in this artery. We've got to smash it back up with the stent and the balloon angioplasty. And I think the most interesting and scary thing is when they actually insert the catheter into the femoral artery, because they put on stuff to protect their head. They put on goggles. They put on everything, the shoes, boots over her, plastic boots over their shoes. And when they insert something into that artery, I mean, the blood spurts up probably 2 or 3 feet out of that artery. It's a really, your heart is a stronger pump than what you realize. And when I saw that, it's like, oh my goodness, but it was only for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and they had it capped and done. But it was just really, to me, that was very amazing. And to see everything they could do just watching a screen, I thought that is amazing. And then a few years later, they had to go through my heart into my lungs to repair my lungs. But because I watched that,
you knew
that's not so bad. I can handle this.
Well, it's a learning experience, right?
Yeah, it was.
Well, I wanted to ask you, I brought up something earlier that I don't know if those are still around because of our technological advances. I mentioned something, again, everybody knows I'm in Texas, but there was a place that you could call, it was called Relay Texas. And that was for we talked about the TTY. A hearing impaired person could type a message into Relay Texas, and Relay Texas, it was a live operator that could talk. So in other words, the hearing impaired person and the non-hearing, the hearing person could talk to each other through this interpreter on the phone.
Yeah.
So, sometimes even I would get a phone call and it would say, may I speak to Bob, please? And I'd say, yes, my name's Bob. And he goes, hi, I'm Susan from Relay Texas. I have a call for you from Miss Jane Doe. So I would have to wait a while. And Jane was typing a message followed by GA. GA meant go ahead.
Go ahead.
So then the Relay Texas person would talk to me what Jane Doe had said. I would reply back, and I could hear the Relay Texas person typing. They're typing a message back to Jane Doe, who is hearing impaired. Now, we have technological advances we talked about, like texting and Facebook. So are there any need for those anymore, Christine? Are they still around, or have they gone the way of the 8-track tapes?
No, they still have something called video relay service, VRS, which is signed like this. And
okay.
If two deaf people want to talk, there's plenty of ways that they can call up a program on the computer and just talk to each other in sign language. But if I wanted to, but if a deaf person wanted to talk to you, you don't have that service. And so they call a relay person who then brings up you on a screen and they interpret. But now the deaf person doesn't have to type it in. They just sign it.
They sign it out.
The interpreter gets it, and then she speaks it to the other person. So it just seamlessly goes back and forth. The only time it's really odd is when, you get a man calling and you say, hi, my name is Gary, and I'm calling about whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
And listening, it's like, Gary, you don't sound like a Gary.
Not to me, you don't.
Yeah, usually you say, this is video relay operator, blah, 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 calling, and I have a relay from Gary. Are you so-and-so? And then they know what's going on.
Got a question in chat again for you, Christine. Richard's asking, how does an interpreter handle words that have different meanings but are spelled the same? How do you share that with a deaf person? I'm sure is what he meant to say.
Yeah. By the way, that person with all those wonderful questions is my son.
Oh, right. Why? I'm glad he's here.
Hi, Richard. I'm so glad you tuned in. I love you. All right. Different meanings.
No, that's right.
Yeah, I love you. Well, if they're different meanings, they really get interpreted differently. So when you hear it's coming as a pun, then I'll spell it. Or like at my church, sometimes the pastor, like a week or so ago, he was reading a scripture and he parked on a word, and I knew he was going to be talking more. And he parked, he meditated, he stayed on that word. So I knew he was going to be explaining it more. And so I started to spell it, because the word was devout. And I just did worship, but he obviously was going to explain it and expand it out into something more. And so I just started spelling it and pointing it out in the verse, and that, that's what we were going to explain. But like, let me see. I'm trying to think of a word. I need an example, Richard. Okay, 2 words that mean the same. I know the word run. As an interpreter, people will say, how do you interpret the word run?
This, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it was this or something like that. Is that true?
Yeah.
Is it run? Okay, say I'm remembering. Yeah, you can. Okay. Yay.
All right, very good. But the question is that I would ask wouldn't be, how do you sign it? I would say, use it in a sentence. Would you use run in a sentence? And they look at me like, really? You don't know what run means? And it's like, well, it depends what's running. Like, is your refrigerator running? You better go catch it.
Yep, that's true.
But it's like, machines run. That's from the old style printing press. It's one of the first machines the deaf really worked with and saw. So that's when a machine runs. Or you can run for office, which is really vying or competing for office. Or you
types of run.
can, I mean, there's a lot of runs. You can not run, but you can kind of run around, or you can just like run around in your brain. What am I going to do? And there's a lot of ways to use the run. You can run over your cat, but you don't want to run over your cat. You can run over your notes. I mean,
yeah, right. Uh-huh.
So it's like, I want to know how you use that word, because that goes back to what I'm saying. Run is a container, and I need to know what's in that container so I can interpret it correctly.
I can relate because, you talked about a preacher just now. This brings me back to a story I know. He started talking about, Gethsemane, and I was, I'm still new. I'm still learning sign. I'm interpreting to this deaf lady. She's depending on me.
Mm-hmm.
And the preacher just kept talking about, the garden of prayer, Gethsemane. And first of all, I was so tired. I was saying the whole word GETHSAMS, and I would misspell it. Finally, I told the deaf lady through the preacher, I was like, I'm just going to say GETH, and it just stopped. So she understood that I just kept signing GETHSAMANE. It's just, sometimes you get these long words you got to spell out, so that's the only new thing I knew how to do, is just I let her know that this is how I'm going to spell it from now on.
Yeah. That is very appropriate and very normal to just make up a sign name. You can spell it a couple times. You can explain this is a place. The name is Gethsemane. Okay. And we're going to sign it wherever you want to put it. You can sign it here. You can sign it here. You can, any sign you want to make, if you want to do it like a place, so she remember, you can do anything you want with it. But like, that's the word. And I ain't spelling it no more.
Let's give another quick sign language course to our audience, Christine. Let's do our numbers. Some of them might be pretty, but some of them. So let's do 1 through 10. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to learn how to count in sign, here it is. So we're going to do 1 through 10 together. So make sure you review this and pay attention very carefully. There's a quiz at the end. Okay, go ahead, Christine. Our numbers 1 through 10.
1.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to get back a little bit.
Okay. 2, 3.
Yeah. It's not this. It's not.
Yes, that's a whole different something.
6.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, this is 1, 2, 3.
3.
4.
4. 5.
6.
Notice we're putting the thumb and the little finger together, ladies and gentlemen. That is a 6.
That's a 6.
Okay.
7.
7 is now you're putting your ring finger with your thumb. 7. Okay.
9.
Now,
8.
8.
Excuse
8.
me.
We're putting our middle finger to our thumb. That is an 8. Okay.
9.
Now you're putting your index finger to your thumb. That is 9. Okay.
And 10.
10 is a thumbs up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hey, you all made 100. I assume you made 100. So we'll test you later on.
By the way, you can count all the way to 999 on one hand.
Yes, you can. 999, right?
Yes, 9 and 100 is a C. Typical C note. 999. Oh, what I was going to say about the letters, like, I don't know if you can see the A here or if you can see the B here.
Yeah, so how we see
and
it.
the C, and then you can see the D, and the E. Now, F you can't see. I mean, F. And G and H, I don't know where they got those, but I is pretty easy, and J you just draw it.
Just do it, yeah.
L.
Okay.
And M, you can see the 3.
L,
and
yeah,
N
M.
is 2. And O. P is down. And then Q is a little just.
Q, yep. Mm-hmm.
R is cross your fingers.
Cross your fingers, R.
And S.
Mm-hmm.
With your thumb here, when it's over here, it's an A.
Yeah.
When it's over here, it's an S. When you stick it in here, it's a T.
That's a T.
Yeah. U, V. You can see the V, the W.
W.
X is weird.
Yeah, why would you? I wonder how they got X like this, where you crook your index finger and put your thumb there. That's an X. I don't know how they got that.
I don't know. Maybe it goes like this or something.
Could be. Yeah, they shortened it.
Y, you can see. If I can get in frame here.
Your Y. Uh-huh.
And then Z, you just draw.
Z, you get your index finger, just draw a Z.
You just
See,
draw it.
commit it. Z. Oh, wow. So there's a test on this at the end, ladies and gentlemen.
Richard, what's he saying now? He's talking about a run in your stocking.
How do you sign uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis in Spanish? That might be...
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, ocho, nueve, diez.
Yeah, there you go. She got you, Richard.
I interpret Spanish at my church. And so I just take the concepts from Spanish and put them into sign language. It's the same thing as doing it in English.
Let me ask you this, Christine. Now, I need to take a refresher course as well. I mean, it looks like that I know, but I have forgotten so much because I've been away from it for a while. But let's just say someone's watching right now, whether live or later on, and they're like, you sparked an interest with them. They'd like to learn American Sign Language. Mm-hmm. Where would they go to learn this? Where would you suggest?
I would look for, well, since COVID, there's not a lot of deaf clubs out there or places where the deaf even gather. I know there's several colleges in my area that offer classes in it. Other than that, there's classes online sometimes. Check with the state. Every state has an institute for the deaf. Here in Florida, it's at St. Augustine. But just check in with them and see what classes, may be available. And sometimes they have movies and stuff that maybe it's stories that for children that you can check out and watch. And I know I learned just watching interpreting. I pick up signs from what I saw. And so those are all resources. But there's a lot of places. There's a dictionary of sign language online, but it just tells you a sign. It doesn't actually give you syntax.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually found in a community I used to live in, they have actually community education classes that would teach sign, and not sign English, American Sign Language. Mm-hmm. And some were beginners and some were intermediate. But even though I know a lot of my signs, I think I better go back to the beginner class in case I forgot something. So, and you, like I say, you are licensed. So there's a lot of things you got to do, though, to get that license. So,
yeah. And once you have it, like I could go anywhere and interpret anything, but it's my responsibility as a licensed interpreter or a certified interpreter to not take things I know I'm not qualified for. Mm-hmm. For example, I love medical interpreting. I've done a lot of it, but I won't go in a courtroom because I don't know legalese, and it would do me no good. It would not do my client any good to have somebody in there that doesn't have a clue what they're talking about. And so I won't do that.
Right, exactly. In fact, I've even heard interpreters have, like I said, a condition of privacy. Like, for example, you go, say an interpreter interprets for John Doe who's hearing impaired to the doctor. Mm-hmm. The interpreter has no right to, break his trust and go tell everybody, hey, guess what John Doe was in there for? You can get sued for that.
Oh, yeah, it's confidentiality.
That's what we're looking for. Yes.
That's what the deaf want, is they want an interpreter who signs like they do, which is ASL, and that knows how to keep their mouth shut. That's what the deaf is looking for. Now, the hearing community, the interpreting community, the deaf community as a whole wants a little more, but usually if you can sign well and not tell anybody what happened in a meeting of any kind, then usually that deaf person's going to like you and think you're a good interpreter.
Now, we've heard the comment. Now, I know the difference between the two, but for maybe people that have heard these terms, Christine, and maybe don't know the difference, we've heard the terms where a person is deaf. Mm-hmm. But we also heard the term where a person is deaf mute. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between the two, or if any, in your opinion?
Well, deaf and mute and dumb are old terms for the same thing, meaning not speaking.
They can't speak, yes.
They can't speak. But I've only ran into a very few deaf people that never use their voice, and I never heard them make a sound.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Most of them do. And so deaf is just all that we use anymore. Mute, they don't use it, and they usually don't use hearing impaired. That's a English or hearing term. They usually call themselves either deaf or hard of hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no line. There is a line for sighted people when they are legally blind and when they're more than legally blind. There is a line. And when you cross it, then you get that label. But there's no line with the deaf. So it doesn't matter how little you can hear. If you don't want to call yourself deaf, you can always call yourself hard of hearing.
Sure.
And there's no rule on any of it.
In fact, I had this experience. I'll give people another sign, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I was trying to talk to someone somewhere. It was at a mall, I think, and I'm trying to ask somebody either the time or something else, and the person didn't say anything, but they said, "I think does that mean I'm deaf?" I think that's what they said. Is that the sign for deaf here?
Deaf.
Oh, so you go up. Okay, so.
Well, it could really either way is fine, but it means you can't hear or talk, which is the old sign.
Oh, okay. That's what they're saying. See, I didn't know that, but I remember them saying that. So that's the sign for like I'm deaf or hard of hearing or can't talk. So I'm deaf.
Yeah, they just say deaf. Now a lot of them will go.
Oh, just like that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the way. That's what a hearing person would understand more than this.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that? Yeah. For example.
Yeah, and profoundly deaf is like nothing.
Yeah. No, I want to say that another sign that we talked about real quick. We got a few minutes left, but we talked about how when you ask someone how are they can say fine, or they can even say good. But if I remember right now, this is the sign for good. But isn't this bad when you turn your hand away? So this is I'm good, or something is good, or that's bad.
Yeah,
bad. So turn your hand this way, it's good. Turn your hand that way, it's bad. Okay. I'm remembering. I'm remembering it.
Or you can say you're sick.
Oh, sick. Yeah.
Say you hurt. And if you had a headache, you hurt up here. Your stomach hurts, you hurt down there where your stomach is. That's a place sign. If you can place it. My throat hurts.
I'd like to talk real briefly about family signs. I think maybe I still remember this. I've turned profile to get this. If I remember right, this is father, like that, father, like this. This is mother, correct? And then if you want to do grandfather, it's father, but you put another hand next to you. Is that correct?
That's one way. Or you can just do this, like 1, 2.
For grandfather, okay. And then grandmother is like the mother sign, but you put another hand next to you for her grandmother. But then you go, or you could go out like for grandmother, correct? So
yeah, a lot of
father, mother, grandfather, grandmother. Okay, go ahead, Christine.
Well, it's just the deaf do it the easiest way they can, because a lot of times you got something in one hand,
That's
you're
true.
holding something, and so it's just easier doing letters, doing spelling. It's just easier if you can do it with one hand. Save space too.
In fact, my former boss, who was executive director of this clinic for the deaf, she always told me, she goes, Bob, remember this. If you're trying to do a sign and it's too hard to sign, you're probably doing it wrong. Because hearing impaired and deaf people don't do signs that are hard. They just, so if you're trying to do something and it's really hard or even painful, you're doing it wrong. They don't do it like that. So yeah, it's been a great, and again, where I used to work, I dealt with a lot of deaf senior citizens, and they were wonderful, wonderful people to deal with, and a lot of our clients were there, and I learned a lot just by having them at that clinic, because they would actually show me. They knew I was kind of new, and all I knew was sign English, so they taught me ASL, and they were a wonderful group of people. I will never forget them. But yeah, I personally want to take another class in ASL. And I know the alphabet, I know my numbers, and I can know a lot of the signs. Like this is the sign for sign language. Is that correct? So see, I'm remembering, folks, but I think I better take the beginning class just because there's probably some things I have forgotten, just to be sure. It may seem like I'm pretty expert, but I'm not an expert by any means, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, so I could say I have forgot a lot of my sign language, so I need to be taught again. So, but Christine, we appreciate it, and again, we talked about the education system. So when you let's just talk about the time period here.
Mhm.
When you learned ASL and you started going in for your certification, we'll put it that way.
Mhm.
What was the time period? Did it take days, weeks, months? I mean, how long did it take for you to be actually certified? Was there a time frame you can think of?
Um, for me, it was different because I grandfathered in. I read a whole lot of books, and then I took the three tests, the three written tests, and then I had to take the three-part signing test. Right now, they're requiring that you have a degree in sign language. Some places have an associate's, and some
Okay.
places have a bachelor's degree in sign language.
Hmm.
But the new rule is you have to have some kind of college degree. I got one it's called interdisciplinary social studies because I already knew so much sign language. I was already nationally certified. But
Wow.
so I got it in sign language and anthropology and language because I love language studies. But
Interesting.
they do require that, and you have to then pass a test. And they're saying that after you graduate from a good ASL college,
Hmm.
that you probably need at least 3 years experience in the deaf world to pass the NIC test, which is the new interpreting certification tests.
Wow. A lot of hoops to jump over, but it's a very rewarding career, I'm sure.
Oh, it is. I love it.
Wow. You know what? I've always heard that if you like what you do, it's really not a job. Is that correct in your state, in your case as well?
Yeah, I just go and I enjoy it. And it doesn't matter whether, well, I really enjoy interpreting at my church, but like I said, I enjoy doing medical. You get to see things and go places other people never get to go. And I just get to go places, see a lot of things, and just learn a lot. And as an interpreter, you can take any class in the college, in any educational program, and it will count towards your CEUs because
Really?
you
Oh,
never
wow.
know what you're going to have to interpret. So anything is acceptable.
That sounds awesome. Wow. Well, Christine, I am certainly glad that you were here. I have learned a lot just by talking to you. In fact, I would like to even say right now, I would love to have you back on the show sometime
Oh,
if you'd be willing.
okay.
So, yeah, it's been an interesting show. I've been looking at chat, and everybody here is just very, very honored and very learning. And it really sparked an interest. And so I'd like to do a follow up with you. And sure. But I want to tell my audience, remember, if you want to learn sign language, just at least the basic spelling, you can Google. I got this off of Google. So I typed in finger spelling, as you can see there, finger spelling. I think I typed in finger spelling American Sign Language, and I came up with this. But this is not the only one. But make sure it says American Sign Language because I found some other ones. I think one was Portuguese and one was another country. And it's important. But this is, if you're in the United States of America, this is probably what you want to look at. And once you download this, and that way you can at least spell your name, it's not hard at all. And you'll be slow at first, but I highly recommend because after all, you might have a hearing impaired person or deaf person that maybe you relies on you, or maybe you need to get directions from, or he or she needs to get directions from you or ask you a question. This would be a good time to do that. So again, Christine, thanks for being here tonight. It has been a really, really wonderful show, and I've enjoyed it a lot. So I appreciate your time tonight.
Well, thank you. I certainly enjoyed being here.
Okay. All right. Have a great night.
You too. Good night. Good
Bye
night,
bye.
all.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for tonight's episode of the Van Buren Variety Show. Again, this is the first show of the new year. And as you can see, uh, there's going to be some great things coming up on this show. So please, if you haven't subscribed already, I'd really like it if you could subscribe, and not just subscribe, but like this video, because that really helps our guests out, and I can see kind of what people are interested in. And again, some really great things are coming around the corner. I'm going to display my email address, and the reason I'm doing this is so that if you have a hobby or an entrepreneur, or if you know someone that has something that they're interested in, a special talent, make sure that you email that goes right to the show, and I can actually book you or whoever you're thinking of on the show, and just let me know what topic you're talking about, whether it's be entertainment, a profession, a hobby, a special interest. I'm always looking for new people to be on the show, and would love to hear from you. And again, I appreciate everybody tuning into the show. It's an honor to be on the show. I'm looking forward to another great year, and actually be on the air next Tuesday with a new guest, with a new topic. So I'm hoping that you'll tune in for another episode. I am Bob Van Buren for the Van Buren Variety Show. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, and good night.